You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. For some, summer is their favourite season. The kids are out of school, adventure's the focus, but for others, such as me, juggling it can be tough. It can lead to overwhelm and counting down the minutes and days till those kids are back at school and the cooler weather arrives. Others may be worrying they're wasting their days of sunshine. Now, I'm not one of those people. For me, hot weather and me do not mix. Now, personally, I have a therapist myself, so I can speak openly and honestly about how sometimes those seemingly irrelevant conversations with my therapist can go on to better my life. Because therapy can help you understand your own needs better. It can make you feel more confident, set boundaries, create a version of summer that actually feels good for you, whatever summer looks like for you. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform. It's served over 6 million people globally, and it works. With an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com. That's betterhelp.com. We've all been away and brought something back from holiday, but what do you do when that thing you bought starts to make your home feel wrong? How would you react if some nice little piece of memorabilia began to feel like it had a history it didn't want you to know? How would you handle the feeling that something in your home had changed, but you couldn't prove what? What do you do when your rational explanation works perfectly, until it doesn't? And how would you feel emotionally if something you did bring into your home brought hell with it? On the terrifying finale of Season 24, we don't promise to answer those questions. Instead, we ask you to draw your own conclusions as we regale to you the final true listener experience for this season of the dark paranormal.
Live from Liverpool, the dark paranormal with Kevin Eustace.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of Season 24. This season, for me, has brought forth some of the most terrifying tales and experiences that has ever been put forward by you, the listener. And with Season 25, as we add a video format to the show, we want your experiences. Yes, we have next season all mapped out, but as you know by now, this is a fluid show. So your experiences may still find their way into Season 25. Now, if you're sat on an experience that maybe you've not felt comfortable telling other people, this is a safe space. It always has been and it always will be. And the place to submit your experience is in the show notes. Or you can go direct to thedarkparanormal.com and click Submit My Experience. And as you'll know by now, we don't care whether your experience is several pages long or just merely paragraphs. One thing we do guarantee is your story will find an audience. If you've took the time to write it out, we will take the time to find it an audience. That's the deal. Before we begin the finale, a huge shout out and thank you to our patrons who allow this show to stay free for everyone listening right now. The same patrons who will receive uninterrupted dark paranormal content throughout our 2-week downtime. And we'll have more information on how to join that wonderful group of individuals at the end of the show, but more information on dates, So today is our finale, and our pre-show, as we tend to do, is the week before the start of season 25. So these are the dates for your diary. Friday the 3rd of July, we will have our pre-show, which will consist of an interview with the two hosts of a wonderful podcast, Charlie and Tyler from Believing the Bizarre. And then, the following week, Friday the 10th, we'll see the launch of season 25 in both audio and video formats. For those who've asked, you don't need to change a single thing. You can listen still as audio as you do, or you could find the video version on YouTube by going to youtube.com/The Dark Paranormal. But right now, we're about to bring to you one of the most intriguing submissions I believe we've ever received. This submission has split our team. One individual simply does not believe this submission, something which I've stated on a previous episode. One of our other members cannot read this submission again because they're in fear of this submission. Now, when I declared on one of our episodes previously that one of our members did not believe, what I did not expect was for the individual who submitted this experience to send me photographs of what you're about to hear, or something within what you're about to hear which will become very clear. And I can only say that this individual who wishes to remain anonymous has either gone through some exceptionally troublesome lengths to perpetuate a lie, and given their want for anonymity and no mention of books coming out, etc., that would seem a fool's errand, or what you're about to hear is the absolute truth. Now, of course, as well as named anonymity, they've also asked I keep those photographs to myself, which of course I will, because they contain the individual who submitted the experience. But I will say, after reviewing them, I have lost a lot of skepticism that I may have had, and I'm now in the believers' camp. And after rereading their submission following receiving the photographs, this experience lands differently. So please, for the final time this season, lower the lights, make yourself comfortable, and of course, most importantly of all, leave your disbelief at the door, as we hear all about the Dark Relic. Hello, Kev. I want to be upfront about something before I begin. I spent a long time deciding whether to send this at all. And the reason I almost didn't is the same reason I think it's important that I did. I'm not a credulous person. I don't say that to be defensive. I say that because it's relevant. What I'm about to describe didn't happen to someone who was primed for it. Let me state that. I'm 38. I work in academic publishing, which is essentially reading other people's arguments and deciding whether they hold up. I have a master's degree in history, and my final paper was on the structural changes within the Catholic Church across the last millennium, which means I know more about the church, relics, pilgrimages, and the theology of sainthoods than most people would find comfortable at a dinner party. So what I mean is I've spent years studying this material as history, as documented human behaviour, as culture, never as anything else. In September 2023, I took 2 weeks in Italy on my own. I'd just been through a difficult 18 months, a relationship that ended badly, a restructure at work that left me doing the job of 2 people, and I needed to go somewhere just to be myself, to think, to decompress. I chose the Veneto because I knew it reasonably well, academically, not personally. I chose Verona for the first few days, then Vicenza, then Padua. Padua is spelled Padova. If you're using the English, it's Padua. And it's not a city people tend to visit for pleasure. It's a university city, one of the oldest in Europe, and it has the Basilica of Sant'Antonio, which draws enormous numbers of pilgrims every year. If you're not Catholic nor a medievalist, you might well walk through the main square, see the outside of the basilica, and move on. I spent 2 full days there, because I find that basilica extraordinary. I don't mean in any spiritual sense, I want to be precise about that, but as a material record of 8 centuries of human devotion. It's genuinely overwhelming. The relics of St. Anthony are displayed in a chapel off the main nave, namely his tongue, his chin, the cords of his vocal box, all removed from his body when it was exhumed 32 years after his death because, according to the Franciscan friars who opened the tomb, they had not decomposed. I stood in front of that display case for quite a long time. My academic brain was cataloguing the history. Another part of me was doing something else that I didn't examine too closely. The following morning, I found the antiques market. It wasn't listed anywhere I'd looked, but I stumbled across it on a side street off the Via San Francesco. Maybe a dozen stalls, mostly furniture, old prints, the sort of things that accumulate when a house is cleared and no one knows what to do with the contents. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. In fact, I was killing time before my train. The stall I stopped at was run by an elderly gentleman who barely spoke English, and whose Italian was several registers above mine. He had a folding table covered in small objects, medals, rosaries, old watches, a few framed photographs, miscellaneous brass fittings, and I gazed over it all without any real attention when I saw it. It was small, maybe 4 centimeters long, cylindrical, made of brass that had gone very dark with age, hinged along one side. I recognized it immediately from my previous work. I knew it was a reliquary capsule, the type that would have been the centerpiece of a household shrine, or worn round the neck of a devout member of that household. These were common objects in Catholic Europe in the medieval period, right through to the early 20th century. Owners of these items believed that a genuine relic was held inside, usually third-class relics. According to the Catholic Church, we have 3 classes. First-class relics are, as I mentioned earlier, part of the saint themselves or blessed person. Second-class relics will be items they worn, for example, rosaries or a Bible they owned. Third-class relics are known as touch relics, things that the saintly or holy person allegedly touched in their life. For example, a prayer card, cloth, a medal, or something someone has reached out and touched the saint's bones or garments with. I picked it up, and it was heavier than I expected. The hinge was tight, but I managed to pry it open. And inside, held under a small disc of old glass set into one end, was a fragment of dark waxed parchment with Latin text on it, pressed close against a small dark object I couldn't clearly identify. The glass was clouded with age and the seal around it, some kind of resin or wax, had partially cracked. The object beneath the glass sat loose in a way that suggested it had, at some point, been fixed more securely. I offered the man €10. He shook his head. He held up 5 fingers. I thought he meant 50, so I pretended to check my purse before waving the €10 note and shaking my head. "This is all I have," I said, waving the note. He shook his head and in broken English said, No, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there was genuine surprise on my face as I handed him the €10 note and he handed me back €5. And then, in a very swift move, he pulled a tissue from a box, picked up the item and placed it in my palm. I said thanks and tucked it into my side pocket of my bag. He said something under his breath in Italian that I didn't catch, and I thanked him and walked away. It didn't register he hadn't touched the object. Mind you, we were not far removed from the pandemic, so I guess I didn't question it. After fastening my side pocket and feeling rather pleased with my bargain, I looked up to look for a cafe so I could investigate the object in more detail. But as I looked up, I noticed in the window ahead of me the reflection of the man at the stall. He was stood still, watching me walk away, and he made the sign of the cross. Now my pace slowed, but I didn't stop or turn my head. I told myself he was crossing himself for an unrelated reason. He was simply a devout old man, and the gesture was merely reflexive. That was something I told myself for quite a while. I was back at my hotel by early afternoon. It was a small place, maybe 30 rooms, the kind of family-run hotel that's been in the same building, on the same 2 floors, since at least the 50s. The reliquary had long since gone from my mind, as my search for a cafe turned into finding a wonderful old bookstore that also contained a cafe. I'd purchased a 1940s English-translated version of the history of the area, and I could not wait to start reading it. However, after ordering a coffee and sitting down with the book, I basically scanned through the wonderful illustrations of some of the churches of the area, thinking I would read it when I got back to my hotel. So, once I did get back, I began to read. As I tend to do, I fell asleep maybe a chapter in and I woke around 10 p.m. But I clearly needed the rest, so I put my pajamas on and I started brushing my teeth. I was going through my nighttime bag when all the lights went out. Not a flicker, just a buzz, then out. I stood in the dark with my toothbrush still in my mouth, my hand still on it, and I slowly kept brushing whilst feeling my way to my main door, opening it to see if it was just my room or the entire building. The corridor was dark too, and from somewhere below, a man's voice called out in an Italian unhurried accent, "Nobody worry, quick fix." I liked this place, it felt very homely, so I leant against my door frame, continuing to brush slowly, and I heard that flicker, and the lights came on again and went off. This time, the same voice called out with slightly strained confidence, and I actually laughed. But the lights did come back on, steady, and from downstairs I heard, "All done." Still smiling, I turned back into the room. He was on the far side of the bed. I don't know how else to describe what I saw except to say that it was there for less than a nanosecond, the length of a blink, maybe less. But it's absolutely scorched into my memory in a way that 3 years hasn't touched. A figure, kneeling in mid-air, just above the height of my mattress, facing me, head tilted back and to one side as if staring at the ceiling. What it was wearing I couldn't tell you, just something dark. What I can tell you was the face, pale, and jutting from the skin above each eye were 2 skin-coloured, almost neat horns. Not large, not dramatic, just there, like they were always part of this thing's face, and then it blinked out of existence. I've heard of the phrase silent scream before, but never truly understood it, but I made one then. No noise came out, but I was screaming. I dropped my toothbrush on the tiled floor and stood in that doorway frozen, with my hand over my mouth. I didn't sleep a wink that night, and I used the paperback I'd bought to wedge the door open. I'd used a chair against the handle every night of the trip for safety. But that night, I needed access to the corridor ASAP. I needed that small strip of light between the doorframe. The next morning at breakfast, I convinced myself it had been a hypnagogic hallucination, the kind your brain generates between sleep and waking. The dark, the adrenaline, the conditions were all right. I'm aware of the phenomena, I've read about it, and I believed that explanation for approximately 2 weeks. I flew back to Bristol on the Thursday. 2 days later, on the Saturday, something in my flat felt wrong. It wasn't one thing, it was more an accumulation of things that, separately, were completely explainable, but collectively seemed strange. I stopped sleeping well on the second night back. Not insomnia, I fell asleep without difficulty. My problem was waking. Fully awake, completely alert, no transition, and I'd be there, mind clear, and I'd reach for my phone. 1:23 a.m. I think the way my phone showed 0123 was what made it stick. The next night, I woke at the exact same time, staring at 0123 again. The third night I was awake before I looked. I knew exactly what time it would be. I looked anyway. 0124. But I'd left it a good 60 seconds before checking. However, the following night, I slept through without waking. And that morning I was relieved. By midday, the last few nights had more or less been resigned to memory. But returning home from work, it was replaced by a smell that hit me as I opened the door. Old wax, and something faintly sweet. Not unpleasant, not pleasant, just present, and exceptionally strong. I checked every possible source, candles, the kitchen, the bathroom, nothing. It was simply there, in every room. Every time I came home for the next 3 days, I was greeted by this smell. But on the fourth day, I arrived home and it had completely vanished. I went in and out a few times to be sure, but no, officially gone. That night, I went to bed relieved. I put it down to something someone else in the building had been doing, and they'd simply stopped or completed whatever project they were working on. That night, I jumped awake from a nightmare. I couldn't tell you of what, but I checked the time. 0123. I remained awake until 4. I am not someone who makes patterns out of coincidence. Professionally, I'm trained specifically not to. But I keep coming back to that. For some reason, my mind jumped to the reliquary. I taken it out of my bag on return and placed it on my bookshelf. I took it down, I opened it and looked at the Latin text through the glass. Now, my medieval Latin is functional at best, and certainly not fluent, and that's being kind. The parchment was small, the writing cramped, most of it obscured by the dark object beneath the glass. But I got enough to understand this was no conventional prayer. It read more like an instruction. The word contenateur, or contained, appeared twice. Then ne movetur, let it not move. And a final phrase that I had to look up myself, subsilio sancti, or under the seal of the saint.
Money goals are things we all have. My personal one is to make sure that I'm mortgage-free by age 50. How am I getting towards that goal? I'm 46, and in 4 years, do I think I'm going to get there? Well, I'm unfoundedly optimistic. But here's the most interesting thing. We only like to talk about money when we've made it, when that goal is achieved. Now, you've probably got our well-being app. Well, Acorns is a financial wellness app that wants to show a little love to everyone who's on their way to a goal. Some people shy away from the word investing because it seems like it's a word for people who know about finance, etc. Believe me, that's not a prerequisite. Acorns is a smart way to give your money a chance to grow. Acorns is easy. You can sign up in minutes and start automatically investing your money, even if you've just got spare change. Acorn supports your big and small goals across every life stage. Plus, the app has the Acorns Potential screen, which shows you the power of compounding and how your money could grow over time. Acorns is an all-in-one. No more finance apps cluttering up your phone. With Acorns, you can invest, save, and give your money a chance to grow in one trusted place. Believe me, I've never seen something like the Acorns Potential screen showing the power of compounding. And even that word, compounding, we all believe that belongs to the ones who work in Wall Street. It doesn't. It's yours as much as theirs. So sign up now and Acorns will boost your new account with a £5 bonus investment. Join the over 14 million all-time customers who already have saved and invested over $27 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/dark paranormal or download the Acorns app to get started.
Paid on client endorsements. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Potential subject to various factors such as customers' accounts, age, and investment settings. Does not include Acorns fees. Results do not predict or represent the performance of any Acorns portfolio. Investment results will vary. Investing involves risk. Acorn Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/dark paranormal.
You've got that idea, you've got that product, you've got that thought, you've got that app, you've got that podcast, you've got whatever. I've been there with the podcast. And you think to yourself, will this work? Is this the right decision? Do I have the time? Take the jump. That's my personal advice. Because starting something new isn't just hard, it's terrifying. So much work goes into this thing that you're not entirely sure will work out. It can be so hard to take that leap of faith. Trust me, I know. For me, it was, what if no one listens? What if I make a fool of myself? And nearly 8 years in, I'm now the director of my own company because of podcasting, because of making that leap of faith. Now, whatever your business idea is, it always helps to have a partner like Shopify on your side to help. Get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand style. Get that word out like you've got a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. But what if I get stuck, you may say? Well, Shopify's always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. It's time to turn those what-ifs into... with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/darkparanormal. Go to shopify.com/darkparanormal. That's shopify.com/darkparanormal.
So summer has well and truly arrived, at least here in the UK. We're in the midst of a heat wave. I don't like the heat for one simple reason. I cannot dress for the heat. I don't wear shorts. I always wear jeans, or usually. However, since my last advert for Quince, where I mentioned that my friend in America has been sending me things from Quince that I order through them, and I found the quality to be outstanding, I decided to take another look back at Quince to see what they had on offer. And let me just say, my summer wardrobe is looking altogether different this year. Like I say, I don't do shorts, so Quince's European linen pants were perfect. They arrived the other day, and we're in the midst of a heatwave, as I mentioned, and they are perfect. Given I'm a summer jeans wearer, these have never made my legs feel more cool in any summer on record. Not just that, but because Quince focus on quality essentials that feel and look amazing, they are well-made basics, but without that luxury markup. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They also work ethically with ethical factories and cut out middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. It's genuinely the kind of brand you end up recommending to everyone for everything. Well, most people will. I'll talk about my linen pants because I can wear them at a barbecue in the afternoon, going straight through to evening drinks. Quince's linen pants have changed the way I'm going to dress this summer. So elevate your wardrobe this summer. Go to quince.com/darkparanormal for free shopping on your order and get 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/darkparanormal for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/darkparanormal. I took as many photographs as I could of the text and of the object, and I sent it to a colleague I know who works in ecclesiastical Latin. I told him I'd found it at a market in Padova and was curious about the full context of the text. He came back the next morning, saying the text was a binding formula. He said constructions like this had appeared in Franciscan liturgical manuscripts from the late medieval period. Not common, but documented. Objects placed under a saint's protection, not for veneration, but for restraint. He used the word interesting 3 times, which, from knowing him, translates as enthusiasm. I didn't reply straight away. I was thinking about the cracked seal, about the object beneath the glass, the one that had come loose from whatever had originally held it fixed. My friend Rosie was coming to stay that weekend, and I didn't tell her about the reliquary. I put the capsule on the bookshelf again, hidden behind a book on the top shelf in the main room, and didn't mention it. She arrived, we had dinner, opened wine, and we laughed and talked until way after midnight. I lay awoke until 1:23. Laying still staring at that number. In the morning, Rosie was already up. She looked at me when I came through into the kitchen, and she said, "Did you have the radio on last night?" I shook my head. She said she'd woken, didn't know what time it was, but had heard a low male voice. in another room. She said she'd almost come through to ask me to turn it down, but by the time she was actually awake, it stopped. My mind was doing somersaults as I found myself asking if she thought it was a different language being spoken. She looked at me rather bemused and said actually it sounded like it was a different language, though I can't say exactly what. I was half asleep. She left after lunch, and as she drove off, and as she was getting into a car, she said, "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Fine. Why?" She stared at my apartment block. "Well, I'm not trying to rattle you or anything like that, but don't you think the flat feels a bit off, like the air's wrong? You should open the windows." Ever tactful was Rosie. I just agreed I would do, and I waved as she drove away. As I climbed the stairs back to my apartment, I wondered if she had smelt that smell, and I'd just grown accustomed to it. But when I walked in, I couldn't smell a thing. Either way, I still began opening windows. As I was on my third or fourth, my phone buzzed. A text from Rosie. It read, "Sorry if I seemed off there. I never had you down as someone who was into art like that." I typed back, "Art like what?" "That painting," she replied. "The one above the bookcase. Like a Hieronymus Bosch version of Dante's Inferno. Christ on the cross in the centre, and those demon-y things around it, prodding him, etc. But I guess it's worth something," she put, followed by some pound signs and a laughing emoji face. I ran into the front room. I looked above the bookcase, and as I expected, no art. There has never been anything above that bookcase. The wall is as bare as it was when I moved in. I checked every room in case you got the room wrong, but I knew I had no such painting, especially like that. But for some reason, I found myself sending a message back that read along the lines of, "Oh God, that thing? It was a gift. It's a bit much, isn't it? I've just taken it down, actually. I've been meaning to bin it for ages. Thanks for the reminder. Laughing face." She replied with a laughing face and said probably for the best. Sleep well. I placed my phone down and went back to opening every window in the flat. This time it was needed, as during that short text exchange, the smell had returned. The following Thursday, my colleague came round in person, the one who had helped me initially with the ecclesiastic Latin. He spent his first 20 minutes here turning the reliquary over under the lamp, with the careful attention of someone handling something genuinely old, cross-referencing the Latin against notes on his phone, muttering to himself in the way he does when he's studying something that has properly got his attention. Over the kitchen counter, he explained that the binding formula was consistent with a strand of Franciscan protective theology, largely expunged from the official record after the Council of Trent, the 16th century series of church reforms that standardized Catholic doctrine and quietly buried practices considered too irregular. He said this particular approach, my reliquary, involved sealing objects of uncertain spiritual provenance beneath a contact relic. As mentioned earlier, something physically pressed against a primary relic of the saint. The proximity of this contact relic to the item of uncertain spiritual provenance was understood to act as a suppression, a lid essentially. The cracked seal troubled him, he said, because the integrity of the seal was the whole point. I asked what he thought the object under the glass was, this object of uncertain spiritual provenance. He said he had no idea, but he very much wanted to find out. I found a magnifying glass and we both looked. It appeared to be something organic, something old. That was as far as we got. I decided to crack and I told him what I'd seen in the hotel. I said it quickly, I said it plainly. The lights going out in the hotel and coming back on, and me seeing that figure kneeling in the air, head angled back, with horns. He laughed. Short, reflexive, not unkind, and then he looked at my face and stopped. After a moment, he said, "Can I see it again?" I gestured towards the bookcase. He crossed the room, reached out, picked it up. Ah! His pain was clear as the capsule hit the carpet before I'd registered what had happened. He stepped back, shaking his hand. "God's sake," he said. He held out his palm to me. 3 fingers and part of the palm, shaking, but all red, already blistering along the inside of the index finger. The kind of burn you get from a hot oven rack. To the right of us lay the capsule on the carpet. Neither of us bothered to pick it up. His face remained in utter shock as we kept his hand under the kitchen tap. He didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. He then said, "You can get that looked at, you know." I thought he was talking about his burn and was just confused with all of the panic. I said, "You mean your hand?" He said, "No, the reliquary. The Catholic Church have a department that look at things such as these, historical items. I think you need to get in touch with them before, well, God knows, literally." I should state that both he and I, but more so he, are not ones for paranormal things. For him to say something like this, well, it forced my hand into action. And shortly after he left, I was on my laptop, eventually finding a site, which I won't mention, but dealt with religious artifacts. I will say the site belonged to the Franciscan chapter of Catholicism, because allegedly that's where this reliquary came from. And so I sent my email along with a description of both what I thought I'd saw and what had happened to my friend, as well as what Rosie witnessed. The full explanation, including where I purchased it from, etc. I expected to get no reply, or if I did, it would maybe be in a week or 2. I got a reply 30 minutes later. This senior friar, who shall remain nameless, asked me to send as many photographs as I could of the object, which I did, and the transcript of text that my friend had verified on my behalf. And I explained that my friend believed this was some form of medieval Franciscan containment. I began texting my friend to say that I'd got in touch with someone and immediately received an email. It was the friar again. One simple question: "Is that a crack in the glass?" I replied, "Yes. Is my friend correct?" The friar replied, but he didn't answer my question. Instead, he gave me an Italian address and said as soon as I possibly could, I should box the object up and send it to him recorded delivery. And once done, send him the tracking details, preferably today. I replied and asked, "Am I in any danger?" He replied, simply saying, "Please." He repeated the address and said, "Send it to me as soon as possible. Don't forget to send it recorded delivery or to send me the tracking number." Within an hour, I was in the queue at the post office with a box in my hand containing the reliquary. It was sent and I emailed the friar with the tracking details. He didn't respond. Around 3 weeks later, I emailed asking if he'd taken receipt. He replied, "Yes, thank you." I then replied with, well, almost an essay worth of questions and said, "Could you please answer this at your convenience?" He didn't respond. I've sent that email 2 more times and still not received any response. And so, Kev, I have no idea what I brought home. I do in terms of it being a reliquary, but what it was, I have no earthly idea, and it seems I never will. But I am thankful to say whatever was in my flat does seem to have left with that box. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Anonymous. Well, Anonymous, thank you for an experience fitting for the ending of this season. It strangely, and I can't put my finger on why, feels very fitting to end this particular season with an experience that is literally an explosion on the topic of belief. Be that religious, be that paranormal. be that you can trap an evil entity or spirit of uncertain provenance inside such an object because the belief of the alleged saint is allegedly stronger in God than that of the evil that sits beneath it. And my mind is almost frazzled at the several different spinning plates of belief that need to be held aloft in order for all of this to actually be real. And I don't mean your experience. I mean theologically looking at the entire belief system from a Catholic perspective, as a very, very lapsed Catholic, of course. But like I said, after seeing the photographs you kindly sent through, reading this again for about the 7th time now, it hits different. And as I said that, I got a shiver genuinely down my spine. Now, I want to thank everyone who's took part in this season. You are all pivotal members of this podcast. Whether you're a Patreon member, whether you're not a Patreon member, everyone who listens or talks about or shares this show helps this show. And I cannot wait to bring you season 25 on July the 10th. So make a note of that in your diaries. Friday, July the 10th is the start of season 25. But we have an interview with the two wonderful hosts of Believing the Bizarre on the Friday before that, the 3rd. And do not forget, as well as sending your experiences in via the show notes, within those show notes, there is also the link for our Patreon. Now, our Patreon team, in my opinion, as I've said, have created a space which is, for me, the most perfect paranormal community anywhere online. And now, with the break in seasons coming up, is the ideal opportunity to get your free week trial at our highest tier. And when you do get that, you will receive ad-free early episodes and also an hour's extra content each and every week solely for Patreons on the highest tier. You also get full access to the entire 200+ hour back catalogue of Dark Bites. And during this 2-week window, where there is absolutely no content coming out, it's the ideal time to join. You can find the link in the show notes or go to patreon.com/The Dark Paranormal. And yes, our Patreons do gain early access to the debut episode and new video episode of season 25. And so until the 3rd, when we interview the two gents from Believing the Bizarre, and the 10th of July, make a note of that again. Please stay safe, and I cannot wait to bring you season 25. Remember, it takes 2 seconds to hit subscribe, and that way you don't have to put anything in your diary. The debut episode of season 25 will simply appear. But until then, stay safe, and remember, when you're discussing the paranormal, always leave some of your disbelief at the door. And I will speak to you again very soon, right here on your show, The Dark Paranormal.